Hi, welcome back to Talking Insights, the podcast that brings you the new trends on the market research industry. I'm your host, Antonio, and today we're joined by Catherine Hull from Where To Research, an emerging voice in social and government research and a rising talent recently recognized for her contributions in the field. Catherine brings a combination of academic depth and practical impact, with a PhD in social psychology, a passion for understanding human behavior at scale, and hands-on experience designing ethical, trauma-informed research that directly shapes public policy and social outcomes in Australia. In our conversation, we explore how her early fascination with collective human behavior led her into research, how Where To balance empathy, ethics, and evidence in the studies that they conduct, and how they affect communities, especially in Australia. And finally, we talk about one of Catherine's proudest projects, a campaign about sun safety. I hope this conversation serves as an inspiration and you learn something new. But now, without further ado, here's Catherine. Welcome to Talking Insights. And I want to start with about your history. When I was researching for this episode, I noticed that you have a PhD in social psychology. What drew you initially to the topic, and how does your top of your backgrounds kind of shaped how you approach market research and consumers' insights? How did it all come together?
Yeah, that's a question I've gotten a little bit, and I love answering that one because I got this interest from my dad. My dad's an economist. He studies macroeconomic trends. And at some point when I was a teenager, I think I was about 14 years old, he brought me into his office to show me these charts he was analyzing. I think he was trying to get me interested in what he does for a living. But when he kind of explained the way he identified and analyzed trends in the market, I was so fixated on you're telling me that these highly predictable trends are being driven by hundreds of thousands of people doing the exact same thing at the exact same time, and they don't know why they're doing it, and they don't know that they're doing it in synchronicity with other people. That's the first time I remember just being so fascinated by people are so weird. Why do we do what we do? What motivates people to act the way they do? And that's where my interest in psychology started. I actually whilst an interesting topic, I was never super fixated or interested in mental health. I always wanted to study psychology to just understand how do people function in a group, in a society? Why do norms develop? Why do hierarchies develop? How does that all happen? And so with that in mind and with that interest, I did a Bachelor of Arts and I majored in psychology, also in gender studies, because that also kind of they complement each other quite well. And as I got further into my education in psychology, I realized that research was where I wanted to be. And then, in the last year of my bachelor's, I had a really awesome lecturer named Cassie Govan. And she, as well as being a lecturer, also founded and ran a kind of boutique consultancy in Melbourne. So a lot of her content was grounded in behavior change stuff and the kind of projects that consultants would do for government or for not-for-profits and stuff like that. And straight away I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that when I grow up. That gets me really excited. And I was very fortunate that she was willing to chat to me about what to do next once I finished my honours year. In Australia, if you study psychology, you have to do that fourth honours year. And she just said, do a PhD. If you've got time to do one, or if you've got the interest in doing one, you should just go ahead and do that, because you're going to learn all those basic skills that you need to have in order to do research in industry as well. Yeah, so I followed her advice, and I had an idea that I was really excited about for a PhD thesis, so pursued that. Had a really, really amazing time in academia. I taught as well, and I really enjoyed my time there, but consulting was always the goal. And then once I graduated, I got a job at Where To, and that's where I've been ever since.
That role of a so-called mentor or someone to give you some advice, it's very important, I think, especially in this industry, to sometimes point you in the right direction or just guide you in some kind of way. But as you were saying, people are weird, and and now you're in Where To Research, which kind of focus on citizens' insights, a bunch of work with people. This connecting the people are weird with the work that you do at research, where to research. How do you design the studies to balance both empathy but also a bit of the ethics and create impact with those studies as well?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I guess I'll start by saying that, the people who ultimately design our research projects are the partners at Where2 and the senior leadership at Where2. But obviously, working in the areas that we do in social and government research, we're always trying to balance the needs of the client with the well-being of participants and the well-being of the communities that we're, in cases where we're trying to speak to specific communities within Australia, whether that be First Nations people or people with disability, always the number one priority for us is applying a trauma-informed lens and a strength-based approach as well. So I'd say that's definitely the priority and one of the core pillars of, ethical research in psychology as well, is we're always putting the well-being of participants first.
And you're in Australia, you have a view of the way that things are done in Australia, but you also have like a global view because we met in the Esomar Congress in Prague. How do you view the insights landscape in the Australia region, and how are like these global trends of high sustainability and all of that influencing that view?
My time at the Esomar conference, I personally found it very inspiring to hear people from other countries and the research that they're doing, particularly in Ukraine. I found that research to be quite moving. I think what I've learned about thought leadership in the global scale is that the priorities are quite aligned with Australia and the research industry in Australia, like trying to understand where AI fits into everything is obviously something that's on everyone's minds right now. How do we best utilize AI in a way that can improve efficiency and improve insights, but not take over our critical thinking for us? Also learning about like as I said, like the research that was done in Ukraine, I found particularly moving and very much aligned with the research that we do at Where2, trying to understand how various factors, whether they be like nationally experienced or internationally experienced, how are those affecting the day-to-day experiences of everyday people, and how is the best way to help them? What is the best way to help them? And obviously having that research be led by the people that it's about is extremely important as well. So yeah, very, very much aligned with our approach at Where2.
Is there any distinctive trend that you see that's been used in Australia and not yet in the rest of the world, or that's more particular for the region?
I don't know. I don't. Sorry, I wish I had a more insightful answer for that one. No, I'd say like there are concerns that are unique to Australia, or unique to Australia and unique perhaps to other countries that are like us. Countries that have First Nations people or Indigenous people, and trying to reckon with the effects of with the ongoing effects of colonization. That's something that comes up very often for us, as it should, and it's very important for us as social researchers to have that front of mind. I don't think that's something that every country on the international stage has to think about. So I guess in that sense, it's unique to Australia.
Yeah. And with your work at Where2 Research, is there, and I know that you cannot talk about a bunch of secret stuff, a bunch of projects that are still ongoing, but is there one project that you're particularly proud of completing or working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did a project about a year ago for the Cancer Council in Australia. Just to give a little bit of context for those who don't know, the ozone layer in Australia is quite damaged. It is repairing itself, but what that means is that UV rays are particularly harsh here. Rates of skin cancer are particularly high here. And when I was growing up, I was flooded with lots of messaging around like sun safety behaviors, like wearing sunscreen, wearing a hat, staying in the shade, all that kind of stuff. And those campaigns were quite successful. But more recently, it's been identified that young people are perhaps, I'm talking about more about Gen Z, people are in their late teens, early 20s now, perhaps less engaged with sun safety. And we did a research project to explore what's going to be the best way to reach young people specifically as a key target audience, what's going to be most effective at encouraging them to engage in sun safety behaviors. And the project was multifaceted. There was lots of amazing qualitative research that happened, really big survey, lots of quantitative analysis as well. My role on the project was to run a structural equation model, which is, it's a little bit like a regression analysis, or trying to understand what factors exist that predict sun safety behaviors and how do these factors interact with each other as well. That's sort of, I guess, a high level explanation of what it does. And through all the research that was conducted, not just the model, but all of it put together, Cancer Council was able to make a compelling case to the government to do an influencer-led campaign, a social media influencer-led campaign, which is something that's quite new in Australia. Often, like, these campaigns of these nature are just sort of ads that you see on TV or ads that you get on social media or billboards or something like that. But the research project that we did enabled Cancer Council to engage with Australian social media influencers, because we were able to demonstrate that if you want to reach young people, we have to innovate, we have to do something new, and we have to go through the channels that they're most tuned into. So I'm particularly proud of that project, especially because a second project or research project was conducted to try and measure the reach of the campaign and the effect that it had. And I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but that research showed that the campaign had, incredibly high reach. And there was also evidence to suggest that it did successfully encourage people to engage in more sun smart behaviors. So that's a project I'm very proud of, and one that's, obviously, like, the topic, I guess, is a little bit unique, but that kind of work is the kind of work I love to do at Where2. Structural equation modeling and that kind of stuff is the cool stuff I get to do, all the time, which I'm really grateful for.
And it has a social impact, a visible social impact, I guess. So that's
yeah,
very
absolutely.
I know that you recently got like a commendation or a salute from the company. We have a bunch of young researchers listening, just straight out of college, but also CEOs from big companies. But my question is, do you have an advice for all these people, from the younger to the most senior ones, apart from wear sunscreen when you're in Australia and everywhere else? But do you have any advice for all of these people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously wear sunscreen. Very, very important. I think it's going to sound a little bit corny, but try to remember why you're doing what you're doing and why you're interested in this kind of work. Part of what I love about my job is that I get to do a variety of different stuff. It's something that I really value. But ultimately, my purpose for doing what I do is to make an impact on violence against women in Australia. That's the subject matter that I'm particularly passionate about. That's the cause that I'm particularly passionate about. And it's, not the only thing I do at Where2, but it is one of the things I get to do there. I get to work in that field. And I think having that front of mind has been particularly motivating when I've been, everyone has rough days, or everyone has those days where they have to do maybe a repetitive task or something like that. And I think just remembering why it is you got into this field and what initially made you passionate about it is really important. Reminding yourself of that regularly. I'd also say that, like, finding something that makes you unique, whether that's developing a particular subject matter expertise or developing a skill. I've spoken about structural equation modeling. That's something I really, really enjoy doing. And not a lot of people get to do it at Where2. Not a lot of people were taught about it when they're at university. And so that's something that I think helps me. It's given me, a bit of a unique offering. And I think whether it be developing a skill or developing knowledge in a particular area, will give you an edge when it comes to looking for work or looking for ways to contribute to your company.
Very well put. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for your time, and thanks so much for the conversation. And yeah, congratulations on the commendation and all the work that you're working on and doing. I think it's very inspiring. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And that's all for today, folks. Talking Insights is a production of Research World and Esomar, bringing you the stories, voices, and ideas shaping the Insights community around the world. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode, share your story, or learn more about sponsoring opportunities, send us an email at podcast@esomar.org. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And join us next week for another great conversation. See you.